presenting your host for the Racecoin podcast, Jay.
Hey guys, so excited to have here Toni Calderon. He's a partner at Speed Group and executive producer of The Gentleman Driver. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
So, tell us about your journey. So getting into motorsport and now producing this new documentary.
Well, I've been in the racing industry for about 17 years now. Got started, I was just a race fan, basically, that, wanted to go to the races and see these cars up close and hang out with the drivers. And I always wanted to be a driver, actually, but my parents were never into that, so it was never even an option. But I got lucky. I became friends with a Mexican driver that was up and coming back in 2002, 2001, around then, and started hanging out at some races with him. I would save up money when I was in high school and in college and just go to some of the races with him. And it was just really cool because I got to see kind of everything behind the scenes, and it's all these guys that I was watching on TV, and then I got to just kind of stand there in the back and just watch. It was really cool. And eventually, this guy, his name was Rodolfo Labin. He got moved up to IndyCar. He was sponsored by Corona back then, so he needed somebody to come, just basically help be an assistant and help him with some of the stuff with Corona and help him with some. He's from Mexico, so translating and things like that. And I just asked him, "Hey, will you give me a job? Don't pay me, don't do anything, just bring me with you." He did. So I started that in 2003, and just kind of moved up from there. It's a small world, so I got to see how everything works and got to meet people. And I'm from Mexico originally, so I was working with a lot of Mexican drivers back then. There were a lot of them. There were a lot of really big Mexican sponsorships in the sport. So I found like a nice little niche where I could fit in, and just eventually moved up the ladder and eventually started Speed Group with my partners James Hinchcliffe and David Martinez a few years ago, and that has really taken off. And now we kind of do a little bit of everything, and that's even before we get into the documentary. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah, exactly. But you really started from the grassroots. It sounds like, you really, really worked your way up. And there's a lot of stories in numerous fields just of people starting off right at the bottom and really kind of just getting to know what it's like, getting a feel for everything, and then kind of working their way up rather than just trying to, jump in and say, "Hey, look, I know a lot about the industry, work with me," sort of thing. So I guess that makes a lot of difference to your level of experience compared to others.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like they always say, you got to understand how it works at every level. And for sure, yeah, you start at the bottom, and then well, first of all, how those jobs, what it takes to do those jobs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And not only how hard they are, but also sometimes
the lack of appreciation, I feel,
Yeah, and the little nuances of it, because then now when I'm teaching my staff, trying to get them to do something, I can, it's easy to just show them a few little shortcuts here and there, but I also understand what maybe when they're frustrated with something that to me sounds simple, I remember, okay, no, it's not simple if you don't know this or you don't know that.
Yeah.
So for sure, and it just, and I think it's not only that, but also gives you legitimacy in the industry, because a lot of the people that are now sort of, running a lot of teams or factories or whatever, or in the marketing and PR side, media, we all kind of started at the same time. So we've all kind of grown together in the sport. So that definitely gives you this special, like I said, legitimacy, but also like this relationship and
sense of community.
We're probably only halfway there, right? Like maybe hopefully another 15 years from now, we'll just be around.
Yeah, exactly. You never know. And so as you've kind of progressed and moved on, and now you've turned into an executive producer of a new documentary. So can you tell us and our audience about that? What is that about, and why did you decide to do it about the Gentleman Driver?
Well, the Gentleman Driver is a documentary about 4 really successful businessmen that race cars at the highest levels of racing. So the Gentleman Driver concept is something that most people outside of the racing world probably haven't heard about. We take it kind of for granted in the racing world, but basically in different types of racing, there's classes that are pro-am, where you basically have a professional driver and an amateur driver competing with each other. Actually, their teammates in the same car. These are endurance races, so they'll kind of be like a relay. So one will come in, get out of the car, the other one will get in, because this can be anywhere from 10 to 12 to 24-hour races.
Yep.
what's crazy is these guys that are the amateurs, they have to pay quite a bit of money to be a part of this. We're talking like in the millions, right? So it's just this crazy concept where you have people like, for example, in my documentary, you have Ed Brown, who was the CEO and partner at Tequila Patron up until a few months ago. He basically grew the company from nothing. So it's this multi-billion-dollar brand, and this guy that, you know, sort of a hero and in the industry, and he's taking 70 to 80 days off a year to go spend millions of dollars on race cars against the best race cars in the world. So like we say in the movie, it's like, you know, you can own a football team or you can own a baseball team, but you can't pay to play at the Super Bowl or at the World Cup, you know, so here you can. So it was this really cool concept, and it just kind of fell in my lap because I was managing one of these guys, Ricardo Gonzalez, who's another guy in my documentary who's a very successful Mexican businessman. And we were actually doing a little video about him, about something else, just a little promo video thing. And my friends who were producing the video, I was explaining to them, you know, what they should ask and how we can make this interesting. And I sort of quickly explained this concept, and their minds were just blown. They were like, well, we don't understand this. He's a businessman, but he's racing against professionals, but, you know, how does that work? So we started thinking like, hey, you know, that could be a really cool documentary one of these days for somebody to make. Not us.
Yeah, exactly.
And, you know, a lot of things, fast forward a few months, we had some footage. We came up with sort of a pseudo trailer of what it could look like. And I've always just been a huge documentary nerd. I'm not involved in the film industry at all.
Yeah. So then how did you get into that? Like in terms of just turning into a producer overnight, basically?
Well, so basically we had the idea of what it could look like. I said, like, I've just always been a nerd. So I said, like, if I watch this documentary, I have a feeling, you know, what I would want it to look like, and the sort of the topics and the theme and the feel of it. So we came up with what would be a pseudo trailer. So if we had footage for it, this would kind of what the trailer would look like, because that's all the footage we had just from what we filmed Ricardo for a few days. And it came out really good, and I started like getting like, you know, the bug. I was like, well, okay, maybe I can find a way to make this work. So I asked my friends that the production company, Velvet Cartel is their name, to come up with a budget, just a rough budget. You know, let's figure out what the stakes, and then if I think it's something achievable, then we'll hire somebody to make it, right? And then they come up with a budget, and we had this trailer, and I just said, okay, let me go out in the racing world with my friends and my people and the people that I know, and see if anybody would be interested in investing in this. And 3 days later, I had the money. Everybody just thought it was an amazing idea, which was amazing. But then I was like, okay, well, great. Now I have all this money.
Crap, now I actually got to do something about this.
So we just said, you know what, let's do it. Let's just do it ourselves. Like, I know, you know, I don't know how to film this, but if we hire somebody that knows how to film it, I can have a good idea if I can tell them. And in the racing world, I can, you know, just point him in the right direction. Go talk to this team. Go talk to this team. I'll be kind of like producer in that sense. And it just kind of went from there. And we had to start filming really quickly because we were here in Austin. That's where we're based, and there was a big race here. So for budget purposes, we had to film this race here. And we hired a director that we found here in Austin that had done a couple of documentaries and had some idea of it, and literally just kind of winged it from there. Knowing
what's the biggest misconception that you had before you started, and now that you've actually finished a full documentary?
The biggest misconception is how long it takes. We always thought it was going to take a year. Almost 4 years. It's about to come out, thankfully. But yeah, that was one. The second one was, this is more of a specific filming nuance, but we actually always had a really good idea of how to, you know, what we needed to film and what we needed to ask and stuff like that. But we just completely underestimated the editing
section
art. The art that goes, not because we always say, we'll just get what we take and just kind of get somebody to put it together. But just it truly is an art. And until we actually hired a second editor after we just didn't have an editor. We just started between ourselves and like assistant editors, we could do it. After that, we just realized like, no, this is like a whole nother. This is probably the most important position in the whole filming. It's like more than the director, more than the producer. It's just who's going to take this 100 hours of footage and turn it into a story. Basically.
Yeah. Turning it into a story that people can relate to and kind of really kind of
exactly.
Yeah. I can
but we ended up having the first few rough cuts where not very good. And it was just a bunch of little mini stories that were interesting, but it just made no sense together. It was like we've done a lot of little 4-minute documentaries, but making it all flow into a feature length, an hour and 20, and something that people want to watch from beginning to end and are interested and captivated by it. That's a whole other thing. Sure.
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, let's take it a little bit onto the other side of things. How did you manage Speed Group while you were doing this at the same time? And, what is it like managing people and drivers and just that entire aspect of it?
It was not easy. I mean, a lot of the filming happened at the racetracks where I was already working.
Okay.
Basically.
So no running around?
I was literally running around, like, one practice or qualifying will be over, and then I would just run over to make sure that, because we had to go interview a different team about qualifying, and then during the races, I'll be running the race. I have my radio set and talking to the car and stuff like that, and then texting my producer, hey, did you already go interview this, or this guy just crashed, go to the pit and do this.
Yeah.
So that was tricky. At home, I just kind of found time, like kind of off hours to do it, things like that.
Yeah.
And managing people and race car drivers is it's a very cool experience. It's a lot of fun sometimes. It's very frustrating sometimes, because these are all like really unique personalities. So I mean, a lot of times you're just making people win races and be successful, and some of the times you're just babysitting, basically. So it's
yeah, I actually spoke to Nick recently, Nick Johnson, and he basically discussed like how it's so important for people to find the right sort of mentor that can actually guide him and help him. And he finds himself babysitting. He didn't put it in those words, but in another word, he was just like taking care of them and really seeing them grow, seeing them seeing the kind of problems that they're facing and how they just want to be the first one around that first corner, for example. And just the kind of things that he has to face, it sounds similar to the kind of things you're facing. And it's great to hear that, people like yourself are not only kind of there from the start to see how people grow, but then really using that experience to help others.
Yeah, exactly. And you start learning, the, like you said, the pitfalls and what works and what doesn't. And one of the reasons why we wanted to start Speed Group is because we saw a lot of people, when we were younger and we were starting our careers, me, David, and Hinch, my partners David Martinez and James Hinchcliffe are very successful drivers, and but back then they were just starting, and I was just like a PR guy starting out. And we always said, hey, if we had somebody to show us the ropes a little better, and not just show us the ropes like what you need for a driver, like just a coach or just a manager or just a PR person, but just somebody, like if there's a company that could just kind of do it all and just just be sort of like your racing consultants or your right hand people that you can go for anything and you can just kind of show up and drive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So now that you've been doing it for like 5 years, right? And you've got your two partners, how has it transformed from when you first started to what kind of things you can do now?
Well, one of the things that has happened is we've gone from not just working for drivers, but now we're working for teams and sponsors as well, which has been pretty cool, because we can sort of, it's definitely a way to scale. Working with drivers specifically, it's very difficult to scale for us because they either want me, or they want David, or they want James, and it's a very close one-to-one
sort of relationship. Yeah,
which has been amazing. We have some of my clients are like, some of the drivers that I manage are like my little brothers, right? So, and it's been so amazing to be able to see how far they've gone and to take him from, I have one of our clients, Will Owen. He went from racing USF 2000, which is sort of like the Formula 4 of the US, let's say. Now this year he was just signed as one of the Cadillac drivers for Juncos Racing in a DPI. So that's for people, that's about as high as you can go for a sports car driver like him. Yeah. So it's been so amazing to be able to help him, take him. That's like 7 steps later after he started, right? And I'm helping him find those opportunities and stuff like that. But also it's been really cool to be able to grow the company to, more of a corporation almost. With now we have corporate sponsors that are hiring us to help them with activation and some sponsorship stuff. And we have racing teams that we're helping with strategy and marketing. And now the documentary, obviously, it's about to open a lot of doors, hopefully. So it's just been, as an entrepreneur, it's what you want, right? You start with an idea and then you start figuring out. Usually, you never know. I don't think anybody knows how to start a company, has everything in place, and then starts filling all.
No, you just got to fail fast and learn quickly, and make improvements, right? It's true. Exactly. I mean, So you obviously had a lot of experience in the industry now, and what advice would you give to those who are starting out and looking for the right path to take? You know, what is the right kind of trajectory to have in this field? What would you
For
say?
drivers or for
For
people
drivers,
working?
yeah.
Well, I get that question a lot. There is no right path in my mind. The right path depends on the person, because there's so many different sort of paths that you can take in racing, whether you're in the UK or you're in France or you're in the US or you're in South America, and also your age, your experience, the funds or your budget that you can have behind your sponsors or personal money. So more than picking a path, what I would say is find somebody that you trust that can help you with it and figure out your situation. But the number one advice would be don't rush it. Obviously, being a part of racing is very expensive, and a lot of people start wanting to just spend a bunch of money up front,
Yeah.
more money than they need to, because maybe the driver is just not ready to go do whatever they want to do, and they just don't have the experience, and you're literally just throwing money down the drain. What we always say is, hey, get prepared, do a lot of testing, make sure you know what you're doing, make sure you're fit, make sure you're mentally ready for this, make sure you have a lot of experience in the lower, go-karting and the lower formulas before you try and go, win an IndyCar race, because you're going to go to IndyCar, you're going to finish 19th and then nobody's going to care.
Yeah, exactly. So how you said find people that you can trust. Where? How?
Well, you can call us. No, I mean, there's like you said, Nick Johnson. There's a lot of good guys. Alan McNish is a great manager out there. Philippe Dumas. There's a lot of good people out there. I mean, like I said, it's a small world. Ask around. I've had some interesting experiences with clients that the people they were with were very defensive, hesitant about them talking to somebody else. That's probably not the right person if you're with that. People get very jealous in racing, and I think I get most of my.
I would say in all aspects.
Oh, sure, yeah. But it's you gotta get a feeling for it. You get a good gut feeling about it. But if somebody has a good reputation in the industry, then they're probably good at what they do. If they don't want you to talk to people, they want you to just sort of be secretive about what you're doing. Then
that's probably insecurity. Yeah. So moving on to a better, brighter future. What does Speed Group look like in the coming years? And tell us more about the plans for the Gentleman Driver.
Well, they're sort of intertwined a little bit, both of them. Mm-hmm. The Gentleman Driver is actually out in the UK now, so your UK listeners, I hope, will go and watch it. You can download it on iTunes.
We'll have the link in the description.
Yeah. So yeah, you can find all that on the website. And it will be released worldwide the 31st of January. So in 30 days, 29 days. So that's very exciting. I can't actually announce yet exactly what the distribution channel will be, but it will be a very exciting one. And it will allow people to watch it all over the world in many different languages. So we're very proud of that. And, I'm really hoping this movie will sort of just inspire a lot of people to want to go race and to show just a lot of potential gentleman drivers out there that you can do this. And yeah, sure, the guys in the documentary are, at the top, at the highest levels of not only racing, but also business, obviously. Mm-hmm. But I think it'll be very inspiring to this. Most of them also just, they started from scratch, and they got to the point where they can go and spend $5 million a year and take 90 days off a year from their company. That means they've done a really good job in the business.
Yeah, exactly. To even
not only is it very successful, but they've set up a team, a corporate team that allows that they can run the company remotely, right? So that's pretty cool. So yeah, I'm really hoping it's going to inspire a lot of people, and we've already had, just from test audiences and from showing some people around, a lot of gentleman drivers that had said like, hey, I watched your movie. What do I do, basically? So on the Speed Group side, we're preparing to be ready to help a lot of these guys, because obviously, hopefully there'll be a few tens or hundreds that around the world that will see it. Like I said, maybe not at the level of these guys that are going to be racing at 24 Hours of Le Mans, or not yet, at least. But we want to just be, whether you work with us directly or not, we want to be a filter to show you. If you watch this movie and you're interested in it, we can show you the path, whether it's completely a beginner's path or you're one of those guys and you just want some help doing what they were doing in the movie. we just want to be either the company that helps you, or just somebody that can direct you, point you in the right direction to somebody else that can help you with it. Because, you know, I think it will really be good for the sport, and a lot of teams and a lot of people in this industry live off gentleman drivers, basically. So if we can, you know, raise that by 10% and raise the tide for everybody, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And you're bringing awareness for that right now. So that's really cool. So thank you very much, Toni, for being on the show. It was a pleasure having you.
No, thank you so much. And I hope you guys enjoy the movie.